start recording. Nobody watches those things anyway. So if you look at the milestones that are here, coming up, beta is due on the 20th, right? So this gives you about a week to prepare for the next set of milestones that you said that you were going to work on, right?
No class on the 18th?
There is no class on the 18th because I will not be in the state. I will be in an unknown state.
Too much fun.
You're going to be in Kentucky.
I will be somewhere. And I'll say it's in the southeast. That's the most specific that I can be.
You're going to be in Kansas.
Is Kansas the southeast? What is Kansas?
I don't
think Kansas is really considered southeast, but
Midwest.
yeah. So I'll actually had to buy my first suit jacket.
How have you made it this far with a suit jacket?
What?
That's the way I roll. I don't like wearing ties and all that kind of stuff, but this is one of those situations that I had to do that. So that was it. Okay, so mobile casual we'll talk about today. We're going to go through, and this actually lecture finishes a little bit early on purpose, right? Because there's a task at the end of it. We've got an AVID visit, data is due there. We have the review. Now the question was, what's going to be on the final exam? In summary, what's going to be on the final exam? Everything is going to be there. So I'm drilling you more on the second half of the semester than the first. You should still remember the high-level kind of concepts from the first part of the semester and know them in more detail for the second part of the semester. So maybe we can talk about and we can do a review, and that'll just be spoken. And if you guys have questions, then you ask them. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Thanksgiving holiday, clearly we're not going to have class then. Final game demos, I will be out of the country here. December 2nd, I will not be in the United States. I will not be in North America. Huh? I will not be in the Northern Hemisphere.
Where are you going?
Where are you going?
I'm going to Peru.
Awesome.
So is where
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm going to Arequipa, Peru. We're trying to set up a relationship, an exchange with that university. So yeah, I'll be there talking Spanish. Wish me luck on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't do it well, but yeah, I do. So the final exam, of course, is going to be on the 9th, and I should be back by then. I'll probably be, all loopy from sleeping in an airport, but there you go. So that's how we're going to finish out this semester. Any questions about that? Yes?
Are the final games still going to happen? Or will it?
Yes, the final game still, because that's 30% of your grade. Yes, the final.
So we're just presenting to each other?
Yeah, so maybe what I'll do, you guys have worked with the Open Broadcaster software. Did anybody play around with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, right? So you could make instead maybe a 3 or 4 minute video or 5 minute video, something like that, and you play through your game and you show all of the features of your game. That would satisfy. Do I have to have a code repository? No. No, that's not really what I'm looking for. I mean, if you wanted to send it and have it as a backup, you could, I could put a D2L spot and you could upload 12 gigs of stuff, but, what's the point? You should be making backups of everything yourself anyway. Okay, so that's how we're going to finish it out. Is everybody good with that? I also have this in D2L where the physics engine or makeup, depending on which one you're going to do, that's due on the 25th, technically the 26th, depending on if you wanted to submit at 8 a.m. And then graduates, how many graduates do we have in here? I think just 2. Just 1 right now. And we can talk later. Yeah. So that's it. Can I begin the lecture? All right. So I'm going to try not to bore you with the standard mobile lecture. When you hear mobile lectures and they talk about, developing for mobile is different, what are they talking about? You've heard these things probably 1,000 times. What's so different?
Generations and safety and powering storage.
Yeah, how you get input is different.
Yeah.
Yes? What else? Memory, yeah. Storage, there's less to work with. Everybody gets it, right? You work with mobile phones. I'm not going to really talk about any of that kind of stuff. Instead, I'll maybe show you some code that would give you the main idea about how that works. And then also talk about the industry itself a little bit more because, as I stated before, mobile computing is really where it's at. There's a lot of jobs. If you're going to specialize in something, mobile is a really good bet. This would be learning things like HTML5, Android programming, iOS programming. Has anybody built a mobile application before? Oh, okay. Are you in the mobile class?
No, it's different.
All right. So you're doing it for fun. Yes, you.
I'm building one in the software engineering class.
Okay, good. Yeah, because if you do that, and As I stated before, I would recommend that you have a broad knowledge about how to develop games across all these different genres and everything, but then you go really deep in one particular topic. Mobile is a hot thing. You can go out there, you can find, I'm getting constantly bombarded. Hey, can you do consulting for us for iOS? Hey, can you do consulting for us for Java? Oh, I see that you've got this. I mean, I'm being flooded with requests, and they're all coming from New York. They think that I live in New York still, and I don't, so there you go. But anyway, yeah, mobile computing is where the money is at. Huh? I used to live right downtown. When I say downtown Manhattan, I was like where everybody wants to live kind of thing. I'm so sorry. I didn't have to pay for it, though.
Oh.
And not to talk, I don't know if has anybody lived downtown Manhattan before? Do you know what the apartments run there? You know what my rent was?
Do you have a rent control apartment?
I did not have a rent-controlled apartment.
You got free.
But I did not pay for this apartment. My rent was $7,500 a month.
Did you have a sugar mama?
Did I have a sugar mama? I still do. No, I should erase that. Sorry, sweetheart, I love you. No, but I mean, it was just there was a lot of financial stuff, like financial companies and stuff, and they constantly are looking for people to do mobile things for them. So anyway, you need to tell me what games these are as we go through. If you don't know these, you need to know these things. So what's cool about the phone is always with you. Everybody knows that, right? So it's predicted that the mobile section is going to be 16 billion by 2016, and these are old stats. I'm sure it's higher than that now. It reaches a much wider demographic. Why? Because everybody has a mobile phone. It actually reaches a world demographic, and realize that in other countries, especially Middle East, that is the primary computing device that they have. They don't use computers when they get home. Everything is on their mobile device. Okay, that's an interesting thing, because if you start targeting that, how many potential users of your game do you have?
Everybody.
Yeah, 4 or 5 billion people, right? So that's pretty good. Even if you get 1% of 4 billion, are you doing okay? Even if you get 1/10 of 1%, you're still rolling in cash. Okay. And again, the deal that I make with you is if you become a millionaire, I just want to swim in your pool. I'll teach you everything I can. I just want to swim in your pool, and somebody's going to make it. And I'm going to have a sweet pool to swim in. Okay. So anyway, yeah. I'm sorry. Other comments? No, we're good. Okay. 50% of these under 40 play mobile games. I think it's higher than that. I would think that it would be higher than that. That's just my gut, though. 20% of these are over 40, but yeah, it's a wide variety of people that play these things. In-app purchases are exploding. Has anybody done in-app purchases before? She's getting an in-app purchase right now. Currently, 1 out of 3 mobile. What does that even mean? Currently, 1/3 of mobile revenue. In-app purchases, yeah. So it's increasing in the mobile space. All right, next game. No, not Angry Birds.
It's like Airstream or something like that.
I've played a version of this.
I think it's called Flight Control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I don't have a smartphone. So
You have a dumb phone.
yeah,
Okay.
Totally dumb phone. It flips everything.
I kind of want a dumb phone again, but that's my own. All right, so if you look at this, Apple's App Store has 300,000 plus apps. I think this is a really old stat. I think it's higher than that. I think it's like 500,000 or 600,000. So how are you going to stand out in that market?
Shiny icon.
Shiny icon. So, right, so you really look at that 57 by 57 icon that they require you to have. But the cool thing is that they passed on $1 billion to developers. We talked about publishers, and you know what publishers do, right? They push your game out there to the market. Who's your publisher here?
Apple.
It's kind of a weird situation, right? You say, okay, Apple promote my game. Are they going to promote it? No, they're going to list it in their store, though, and it's going to reach a huge demographic there. But the nice thing about it is that they pass so much money on to the developers. How much did they pass on to the developers?
70%.
70%. Right? That's pretty standard, and you're going to see that across all these different things. Like, okay, we're going to pass on different amounts. What about Steam? How much did they pass on? Nobody knows. You will never find out with Steam because all that stuff is negotiated ahead of time. Okay? Android Marketplace has 100,000 apps. Again, I think these are really old stats. It's probably at like 300,000 or something like that. Nokia's Oki. First of all, where is Nokia made?
Finland.
Very good. They said Finland first. A lot of people think Nokia is from what country? Japan. right? So just realize that I actually had a job interview question. Well, where's Nokia?
At Microsoft.
Who you would think. But typically, if you 70% of the revenue, like we talked about, we have to offer games for free. Do we have to offer games for free? No. Why would you do that?
In-app purchases.
Think about how cool it would be if you had 1 million people that downloaded your game.
$1 million.
No. That's, yeah, if it was free, why would you do that to create a user base, right? So you're trying to do that, and then you go with the in-app purchases, and even if you had, let's say, 10 cents for your average user, then you have $100,000. That's pretty good at the end of the day, right? So do you have to offer games for free? No, but it's something that I'd probably recommend, especially if you give them some kind of demo, right? How do we get discovered?
Throw your stuff out there for free.
Yeah, you do stuff like that, and you hope that enough people download your game. Why?
That boosts it up.
It's like, oh, everybody's downloading this game, so what should I do? Download this game. Oh, and that causes you to download. It's this chain reaction. In fact, if you look at the explosion that occurs, if you have a successful app, it's going to go like this, or maybe I should do it backwards. It's going to start out, you're going to see this kind of, and it's go, and it's going to come back down, and at that point, you're a millionaire. That's for real, right? It spikes, and then about 3 or 4 days afterwards, it's gone. And you're not making more than that, right? So it's really kind of freaky when you think of it that way. What game?
It's a game.
It's not a game. Could you have a graph game? Probably, but nobody would down, even if it was free. Okay, so here's a market, and I'm having a hard time seeing your phone, right? But 50%, 57% of AT&T wireless customers play games. I think it's higher than that. Again, these are old. Why do they play? Why do you play? Has anybody sat in the airport and had nothing to do? That's why people play, right? That's one reason. What else? Why else would people play?
Escape reality.
Escape reality. That's the same reason people read that they play video games. What else? I mean, there's
Too much money. So just want to give you
They could be. What's the most expensive app? Does anybody hear this in the App Store? I'm rich, or I have too much money. I can't remember what it was, but is it? And it was a picture of a diamond that cost how much money? $999. Was it Ruby? Okay. And people bought it. I'm not recommending. Make sure you take ethics before you do anything. But anyway, yeah, they play it for a wide variety of reasons. I can't tell you how many times I'm just burnt out at the end of the day, and I just want to shoot something. Not for real. Time. What's unique about this? 91% of mobile sessions are less than 30 minutes. We're starting to get into the design aspects of mobile games that you probably are aware of, but they need to be explicitly stated. 62% are less than 15 minutes. Why?
You're waiting in line at the bank.
You're waiting in line at the bank. You have nothing better to do. I mean, I even see it. You guys have seen it too. You're probably guilty of it. People break out their phone even at red lights, right? Yep. Oh, I'm bored at a red light, so it's time for me to check my. Yeah, don't raise your hand. And the texting and all that kind of stuff, it actually kills people. We know that now. But so just be careful of that. Women play for longer periods of time.
My family disagree.
It's because they're smarter than we are. Don't let them.
waiting for food to cook.
Women play for longer periods of time, so start thinking about those demographics, right? The most popular games for mobile, Bejeweled, right? Puzzles, card casino games, 51%, board games, 50%, action adventure is only 11%. So you can see that we really flip-flopped what we traditionally think of as being a computer game, right? Why is this such a low number, action adventure? And I played it a couple times. The commitments, exactly. Like, are you going to have an MMORPG on mobile? You could, and there's some problems with that. Yep. It's time to back up.
Yeah, then you literally can't use WoW people off the plane.
Are you going to play WoW on your phone?
No, why?
If you could?
The controls would be all good.
It wouldn't be any less fun.
Here's my question. What is the most popular game of all time? Mobile. Somebody got it. It is Tetris.
Oh, of course.
100 million downloads of
You don't need a
Tetris.
smartphone to play that.
And you don't need a smartphone to play it. Okay? So it's interesting. What is it? If you can't read, it says Farmville. Right? People make fun of Farmville. Should they? Yes, of course, right? The game is awful, but you think about it, they stumbled across something that made them exceptionally rich, right? This was Zynga. It doesn't matter, but now they have so much money they don't even know what to do with it. So they're branching off in all these different directions. EA is even getting into mobile, right? They said, okay, we're really gonna start pushing into this area.
Oh, yeah, that's
Quote, anyone who fails to recognize that shift will be left behind. So they've devoted huge resources into getting into the mobile space. Mobile is where the future is. Phones are, of course, going to get better. They're going to probably have 3D displays. They're going to be able to, have Princess Leia come out and say, help me, Obi-Wan, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, well, I didn't say he was smart.
It's just a good.
But it is a true quote, right? Do you think mobile phones are going away? There's just no way, right? Okay, what game? I think I actually have this one on my phone.
Zombies something. Zombies in the name.
Stupid Zombies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
And the point is, with this one, you basically click where you want the bullet to shoot, and it kind of bounces around, and you kill zombies, right? So the habits. Average user has 27 apps on their phone. How many apps do you have on your phone?
A lot of them aren't really games.
The preloaded ones, yeah, there's a lot of garbage, but now how many have you put on there? Has anybody put more than, at the same time, 30 apps? More than 40 apps?
Yeah. We have that much storage.
Not really. More than 50. Does anybody have more than 50 apps? Okay, there's a couple of you.
At 140.
And as memory starts to increase on these phones, of course, they're going to have more and more apps on there. Games are the most popular ones. You can listen or watch other multimedia while you're doing these kinds of things. So casual gamers want something quick, something simple, something non-committal, and something that requires no deep thought. Do you think that this Zombies game here has any of those features to it? How long does it take you to start a game of Stupid Zombies?
3 seconds.
Yeah, you click on that thing and then you get to start playing it. Is it simple? What's the interface like? You tap on it, right? And also, that's for people who are driving. Oh, I can play Stupid Zombies while I'm not suggesting that. Non-committal. What happens if you get a phone call or something happens?
You can
You just shut it off, right? And then no deep thought. Clearly, there's not thought in a zombie game. Okay, what game?
Tiny Wings.
Nope.
Well, that's still
The rip-off of Tiny Wings.
It could be.
yeah.
This one's fairly old, though. Dragonfly. Dragon, fly, not dragonfly. But yeah. And the idea is you're trying to get away from your mother who's chasing you across here. How do you interact with this game? What do you do? You tap. Are you starting to see a pattern here, right? You tap, and that's going to pull the dragon down so it sticks a little bit more towards this curve, and then you let off, and it kind of flings the dragon, and you're building up more and more momentum as you're going through this terrain. Okay? So these things are typically small in scope, right? There's no MMORPG version, or if they are, they're not successful. They're easy to learn, simple mechanics. What is the most simple interface that you've ever seen? You think the Kinect is the most simple?
No.
What requires the least amount of mental thought and explanation? If you had to teach somebody how to play this game, press space to win. Okay? Could you have a game made off of just a single key?
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, I think I have a link to it somewhere. It was this gravity-based game. You would press the space bar, and gravity would turn on, and you'd get sucked towards these large kind of metal spheres, and then if you let off, there was no gravity, and you just kind of floated around. Your goal was to literally to make it from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen. Sounds stupid, doesn't it? The game was awesome. Right? So other kinds of things, you want to keep the UI simple, of course. Mobile context is interruptible, right? You can get a phone call, something like that can be played anywhere, anytime. I think everybody knows that. And rely on mobile. What does that even mean, rely on mobile technology?
Not virtual D-pads.
It means don't market them towards PC and support them.
Or like,
Yeah, I don't even know why
there is
some
some
games
games that actually put like a D-pad on the screen.
What's the problem with putting controls on the screen?
There's not much real estate to begin with.
Yeah, you've got this big of a space, right? So you have to really carefully analyze what you're going to do with that. In fact, I think there's some guidelines here a little bit later on. I am guilty of this in one of the games that I've made. I put the virtual joysticks. You know why? Because it was cool. And it worked, but it didn't work really well. Well, in fact, one of the augmented reality games, We had it where you could smash the button as fast, like this little virtual thing. What's the problem? You've got an augmented reality game and you're shaking the whole phone. Well, why is that a problem?
Breaks immersion.
You could.
Augmented reality. You're moving the camera around.
You're moving the camera. What's the problem with moving the camera around?
It's augmented reality.
It shakes everything. It smears the image that you're trying to track off of. So all of a sudden you go like this and you can't see anything. All the fighters just disappear. Right? So there's really interesting kinds of user behavior that ties in with how you're going to design this. Non-explicit no. The trend is evolving from 2D to 3D. How many people play 2D games? I think almost everybody. How many people play 3D games on their phone?
Is
A true 3D game?
Yeah.
Is there such a thing?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. You do. What is it?
Something called like Walker Athletics pass thing that you can bullet forward.
How about Temple Run?
Oh, Temple Run.
Is it even one count?
Is Temple Run 2D? Or is it 3D?
It's 3D.
I think it's actually 3D. I don't know. We'll have to look.
Temple Run's 3D.
Oh, it's 1.5.
Well, I mean, is there anything really truly 3D? Okay. And also respect user privacy. Try not to snoop around. I don't know if you get a little bit paranoid when you install something and it says, hey, this application wants access to your database. It wants access to your social security number. It wants your firstborn child. And no, thank you. What game? You don't know that one. Shame. All right. So basic mobile design. Users should be able to start a new session frequently, which we just talked about. Design considerations for visuals. Basic problem. You have a small screen. You have to convey information to your characters. If you notice, the characters are usually relatively small, 10 to 15% of the screen width and height. They say that 6 pieces of HUD or less, right, your head-up display and giving you some kind of information. Anything more than that is going to block the screen. Touching the screen is going to block it too. So if you're expecting that they go and touch, are they left-handed or are they right-handed? Are they holding the phone? Think about it. Which side are you going to put your buttons on? And if they do decide to press that, think about it. The entire screen is blocked with their hand. So they're not going to be able to see whatever kind of feedback you have there. Also, optionally, you try to keep the backlight on. Why?
So they don't get.
They're playing a game, right? You don't want them all of a sudden just to black out and they can't see anything. So you really have to critically justify everything you put on there. Also things, you don't want to have a chat feature in a mobile game. How would that work?
Just turn on the call.
Worked in Words and Friends.
Yeah, I mean, it's not graceful, right? So if you're sitting there trying to do IM and all that kind of stuff.
You can make it work like
Complex input. In fact, we're going to do this at the very end. We're going to break up into groups of 2 or 3 or 15, it doesn't really matter. And I want you to design the worst mobile experience you can. And so complex input is fun sometimes, but not when you're in a multi-touch kind of environment, right? So what are you going to expect them to do? Are they going to have to do swiping and that kind of stuff? That's not so bad. But what happens if you have them do, like, oh, you have to do 9-finger gestures, all that kind of stuff? We could capture that, but it's not going to work out. Okay? So it's okay to be slow, but don't give slow feedback. That's just a good advice in general. What game?
Labyrinth.
Labyrinth, yeah. Okay. So other kinds of things, the capabilities here, there is no joystick, there's no physical mouse or keyboard, so we have to look into alternative ways. Do we have buttons on the phone?
Yeah.
There's like a volume control buttons, but they're
Do I have buttons on my phone?
Yes.
Is that?
It's like physical buttons?
This is the latest, greatest, high-end, this is like a $12,000 phone. That's a total, no, it's like a $50 piece of garbage. Does it have buttons? It has like volume up, volume down. It also has this little weird thumb reader thing that I will never use. Okay, so why is this so problematic? Because all of this physical nature of it, how are you going to map that back to your game? You have to think about every possibility. Do they all have great high-resolution displays? I mean, it seems like now everybody's getting phones that are about this big so that they can play.
Or these.
Yeah, is that a phone too? But they're making things, making these pads now that have phones in them.
It's true.
Right? Now how are you going to put that in your pocket?
Idiot. You're like,
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Right? It's like going back to the when phones were the size of a brick.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different examples of that. Accelerometers, gyroscopes, I'm not going to beat that one up, but you get it. Restricted memory, the network is kind of limited, and there's also a limited CPU. Is there a GPU on your phone?
Yes.
Yes, probably. If it's anything recent, then yes. Okay? What games?
That's
So how do you get started? This is the number one thing. A lot of people are, like I said before, paranoid about diving into something new. It's okay. Android programming is not that difficult. It is in Java, though. Have you heard of this language? It's not C#. No, I haven't heard of it.
I learned how to program this in Java.
You're going to see examples. I actually have some code here so that we can walk through it so that you're not paranoid about this. Now, the first thing that I did is I put a link here for you because setting up the environment is nasty. This is like archaic. This is what it was like to program back in the 80s. You had to set up all of these weird kind of things. So this guy walks you through, hey, you want to write an Android app? Here's what you have to do to begin with. And he's got this real thick accent, but he does a pretty good job. So you can check out that. That's where you would start. But typically you need an IDE, right? What have we been using? Visual Studio. Here they're going to use Eclipse. Why Eclipse?
Cross-platform.
It's Java. Yeah, I mean, that's what they use for Android stuff. Okay? It is in Java. There's an Android SDK. SDK stands for?
Software Development Kit.
Software Development Kit. There's also an NDK. New Development Kit. What is the N?
Network.
Native. Okay, so one of the things that you can do, and you have to get comfortable with this concept, you can write a lot of your high-level stuff in Java, and you write a lot of your low-level stuff in C and compile it into a form that you can then call from Java. So you write your own, essentially, DLL, and you're able to call those things from Java. Do you have to do that? No. Why do you want to do that? Speed, right? Anything that's written in C and is compiled natively, like this right here, and you can make those calls. If you have like artificial intelligence, things that are really processor intensive, you would want to start looking into the NDK. Do not do this for your first project, though. It's probably not what you want to do. It requires a whole tool chain setup, everything else. Do you need an Android phone?
No. I assume it would help.
It would probably be good to have one, right? Because they're not that expensive. But you don't have to have one because a lot of these things have a simulator that's built in, and you can just say deploy it to the simulator, and you can see what it's going to look like in the simulator. What's the problem with the simulator?
You can't test the touchscreen.
How do you test the touch screen? You might be able to do some mouse thing. How do you do multi-touch? Multi-mice, yeah, I'm going to plug in. Hey, I've got the 7 USB mice plugged in. No, it's not the way that it works, okay? Other things that you can't test.
Accelerometer.
Accelerometer, maybe, gyroscope, stuff like that. You believe it or not, or GPS, right? There's another thing. There are features in some of these simulators where you can say, I'm going to feed fake GPS, or I'm going to feed fake events to the simulator. And it has a separate way that you could do that, but it's still possible, right? So normally you don't have to do this, but if you are doing any kind of OpenGL ES, what is the ES? Have you even heard of this term, OpenGL ES?
Explorer.
OpenGL. Let's take a step back. What is Open
GUI language.
graphics language? Yeah, right. And the ES is for an embedded system, right? So you're talking about mobile kind of development. You have to learn OpenGL before you learn OpenGL ES. Okay? What game? Visual Studio, the best game ever, right? If you want to do Win 7, which is now kind of Win 8, if you wanted to go back and do Win 7, you can pick up a Win 7 phone for like 50 cents now, right? They're super cheap. But you would need something like Visual Studio 2010. You have to have Service Pack 1 installed. You can download the Win 7 SDK, and it's this really huge kind of bundle, but it's still possible. And it also comes with an emulator. What does that look like? It doesn't matter. I thought I had an example there. Such a letdown. We'll come back to that. Getting started in iOS. What do you know about iOS? What's the main barrier for us?
It's Apple.
It's what?
It's Apple.
It's Apple? Okay. That is a major barrier, right, for a lot of folks. Do you have a Mac at home? A lot of you don't. It's okay if you don't, right? Right? Do you need a Mac or do you need a Mac?
You can run an
I'm
emulator.
not recommending this, but what can you do?
Install OS X on a
You know what a Hackintosh is?
Hackintosh.
Okay. I'm not suggesting that you do that because it breaks all of the laws that are associated with that, so don't do that. All right? That's why I put the or do you. Xcode. What is this piece?
The IDE.
It's the IDE that comes. It's free, provided that you actually purchase the operating system. You can get Xcode, and then you have to learn this thing called Objective-C. Oh God. And I say and C++. You do not have to learn C++, but when we were first hacking on a lot of this stuff, I didn't know any Objective-C, and I essentially destroyed the language of Objective-C. And then I wrote everything else in C++. So I would have these really small sub kind of functions that are just the minimum amount, and then I would write everything else in C++, because the C++ would always work, and I could just call it from the Objective-C. So I tried to do everything I could in C++. But yeah, it's a totally different language. You know, if you look at Java and you look at C#, are they the same?
Very
I'm not going to get into the holy war that is the best language, right? I'm not going to open that can of worms. Java and C# are basically the same. What about C++?
It looks like C#.
For the most part, it's kind of the same thing as Java and C#. When you get into Objective-C, it's different. Okay? It has a different look. Has anybody seen, you should be taking a programming languages course. Has anybody seen things like Scheme or Lisp? I get this all the time. People come in and say, oh, I really know how to program. I'm a really good programmer. You're a good imperative language programmer. Have you looked into some weird, have you ever programmed in assembly?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay, at least you've seen assembly. Have you ever programmed in a logic language like Prolog? You need to start seeing some of these other languages. If anything, and there's some really, by the way, very vulgar names for programming languages that I'm not going to get into, but you can probably Wikipedia this thing. There is a language that's made entirely of white space.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. And white space, in other words, spaces, tabs, returns, all of that stuff. So when you open up the file, what do you see? Nothing. And it's an actual language, right? So there's a lot of weird stuff that's out there. Point being,
If you don't want to understand what you're programming.
point being is if you want to learn, is iOS cool? Yes. A lot of people think, I just want to work for Apple no matter what, right? You can learn Objective-C. The best thing that I would do is to go to the primer on Apple's site. Leverage what you know. Do they have classes? Do they have functions? They have all of these kinds of things, but there's a great primer. This is where I learned it the first time, and I think the second or third time too. And then I found a book or something like that and learned it the fourth time. And then I've forgotten everything I've learned. But it uses a different kind of messaging interface, and that's the hardest part, is to figure out how this stuff actually works. Okay? There's websites and everything else there. What is this, by the way? Got the rope. Root Ninja, yes. So basic structure of phone apps, right? So you're going to see that there's a whole bunch of callback functions. You need to get comfortable with this term. What is a callback function?
Function that waits for.
It's a function that waits for an event to call it, right? So if they've touched the screen or they've done something, then you have all of these functions that are waiting to execute, okay? So we say, therefore, it's event-driven. There's an initialization, a destruction, a drawing input. Is this one familiar?
Yes.
Isn't that how XNA is structured? Yeah, basically the same thing. Okay? We also have input events, touch events, all that kind of stuff. All right? Here's an example Android project. Okay, yes, this is Eclipse, and that's why it looks a little bit different. There are several different versions of Android. What's the latest one? I have no idea.
KitKat.
Is it called KitKat?
Yeah.
I remember hearing this guy complain about he had this really thick Russian accent. He was so mad that Google, when we were at GDC, you want to go to GDC, Google would actually give you a phone. Hey, come to our stuff. You know, come to our demo. We'll give you a phone. You get like a $600 phone. You get a free Google phone. This guy. Do you know how much you pay to get to get into GDC? It's like $1,500. They're making a fair amount of change. You get all sorts of swag. But the year that we went, everybody was standing in line for Google stuff because they wanted to Google, what was that little
Nexus?
Chromebook? It was Chromebook, yes. They were expecting Chromebooks to be passed out. I was one of those people, and I remember hearing this guy get so upset about how Google is so mean. They haven't given us anything. Google is so mean. He would have this real Russian accent, and so I took a picture of him standing in. I think John took my picture, and I was going like this, standing next to him. But yeah, point being is he kept saying, ice cream sandwich. I've got ice cream sandwich. An ice cream sandwich. Now it's KitKat. What's it going to be next? Who cares? Anyway, Android project. You have to make sure, what's the problem with Android? You have to set up a lot of stuff, but you also have different versions of Android that are out there. So what's the best one to pick? You pick the latest one?
No.
I cannot install the latest update on my phone. I have an Android phone myself. I can't install it.
You usually pick the one before the newest update. That's one.
Is that the safest one?
No. The first one.
You understand what I'm saying. So what's the benefit of picking the later one? You get all the fancy features. You get all the new support that you could, your SDK is awesome. What's the problem with that? Not everybody has it. So you have to start looking to say, where's the best bang for the buck? Are you going to require the player to upgrade their system so that they can play your game? If you think your game is really that good, then perhaps you can get away with that, right? So not all phones have the latest SDK. It says 2.2. You can probably get away with 3.0 by now, I think. Okay, here's what Android looks like. I know it's a little bit small, but let me walk you through it. We have a whole bunch of import statements, which are what?
Libraries.
Using statements. Yeah. Let's do a C# equivalency here, right? Public class test of Android activity. I couldn't think of anything else. Extends activity. Everything on Android starts with activity. It's like the base application kind of class, right? We have a public void on create, which is what?
Initialize.
There's your initialization. Public void on pause, public void on resume, on destroy, on touch event. So you see, as soon as a touch event has occurred, then it's going to call this method right down here. What do we have over here? Same kind of layout. Looks a lot like Visual Studio. Then we get into this. Isn't this nice? We have a little interface tool that will allow us to kind of put things visually around, so we can drag and drop text boxes and buttons and everything else on here. Notice, though, right here, I've clicked on main.xml. So everything is XML based, all of layout. You're going to see this in a second. Also notice that right down here, I've clicked on the graphical layout tab. Here's what it looks like otherwise. All right, so we have a really simple interface that's here. There's basically two things or one thing. I've got a text view and I've got a linear layout, which basically just says where these things are supposed to be. Right? Notice that we now have we're in main.xml as opposed to the graphical layout. So these are equivalent, right? That guy and that guy, same thing. Turn this way. Okay, if you want to get into Win 7, does anybody want to get into Win 7?
No.
Can we just skip it? Let's just look at it real quick. So you can probably figure most of this out. It does support multiple touch events. You have this touch panel where you can ask, hey, what capabilities do you have? We used to require people in 1301 to do this, or 1302 to do this. So if it's connected, you can say, give me the maximum touch count. So if it supports up to 4 fingers on the screen at the same time, 5 fingers, it doesn't really matter. And then right here, we can say, hey, for every finger that's in this touch location once it's occurred, then we can start to parse it for its position information. So it's pretty straightforward kinds of stuff. It also has things like a gyroscope. So you can say, if the gyroscope is supported, then what do? We get a new gyroscope reading, and then it gives us back a vector 3 with regard to the orientation of the device. Okay? So here is your task. Based off of what we've talked about today, I want you to get in groups of like 2 or 3, and we can throw it out. I'll give you about 2 minutes to do this. I want you to tell me what the worst mobile game you could design would be like. And it has to be awful, because I've got one that you hear these. Well, I'm not going to. I'll tell about it later. I don't want to taint what you're going to come up with. If you could flip on the lights real quick. Yeah, I'll give you about 2 minutes, because people, it really gets you thinking about how bad a game could be. You're on the
What?